What's up everyone, and welcome back to another video. It is the big blank game week of the season, blank game week 29. We're going to talk through some key players that I think you guys should own to maximize your green arrow in this big blank game week of the season. If we start off by just having a look at what fixtures are taking place in game week 29. So there are only 4 fixtures, as you can see. Brighton at home to Newcastle, Fulham at home to Leeds, Aston Villa against Tottenham, and West Ham against Arsenal. So there are some fixtures that you may think are potentially easier, but there are no standout fixtures that I think you really think will go one way or another. Brighton versus Newcastle, you'd probably favour Brighton, although that point that Newcastle get against Aston Villa shows that they do have the possibility to get some points out of that game. Fulham have looked really good recently, and Leeds haven't looked quite as good as they did previously in the season. Villa against Spurs, you'd expect Spurs to get the win, but we know how good Aston Villa have been defensively. And then West Ham versus Arsenal, a London derby like that, again, it can go any way. So just a reminder of those fixtures. Below me throughout the video, there will be those fixtures just to remind you when I'm talking about each player, what fixture they are involved in. So if we start by having a look at some of the key players to own. Now, these are some of the high ownership players that I think if you don't own, you run a risk of getting a red arrow, because I do expect them to do well, but they will have high ownership. The first one, of course, is Harry Kane. Now, he's probably going to be the most captain player in game week 29. He does go away to Aston Villa, but given his form recently, and then he's coming off the back of hopefully some points in the London derby for us all. But yeah, I expect Harry Kane at 11.4 million to be probably the highest owned player in game week 29. Next up, we have Antonio. Now, he's so key to the West Ham attack, and we know Arsenal are very susceptible to giving away goals that they probably shouldn't do, and West Ham have played very well recently. So I expect West Ham to score in this game, and Antonio is more than likely going to be involved in that because of just how sort of that focal spearhead he is for that West Ham attack. Next up, we have Rafinha. Now, he has a tough fixture actually away at Fulham. Fulham have been great defensively, 2 newly promoted sides, so it doesn't really feel like that now so far through the season. But on set pieces, he was so attacking when he does play. I really think a lot of people, including myself, will be looking to bring him in this week if we don't already own him. Next up, we have another Leeds player, and I feel like Dallas is one of those players who's always a talking point for Leeds. He's playing that sort of centre mid role, so he gets that clean sheet points if they do keep a clean sheet like they've done against Chelsea, but also that attacking threat that he can bring playing that centre mid role, going forward into attack. So Dallas at 5 million, again, away fixture against Fulham. I think it's good from a defensive point of view, so I would be looking to own Dallas in game week 29. And the final one is Bamford. Now, Bamford did go off injured against Chelsea in game week 28, and we're not sure whether he's going to be fit and ready to go again in game week 29, or whether they'll give him a bit of time off ready to go again in game week 30. But if he is fit, he will be one of the highest owned players. Away at Fulham, a lot of people have had him for a long part of the season. He's gone up so much in price, up by 1.3 million from the start of the season. He is that focal point in the Leeds attack. If they're going to score, he's definitely going to have a high chance of being involved. But if Bamford is to be injured, the player I'd replace him with in my top 5 is Son. Now, there is a big debate on Son versus Bale. It's just that I know Son is much more likely to start every game than you will get from Bale, which is why I've gone with Son out of the 2. But I do think Gareth Bale could be a good differential going into the big blank game week. Next up, we're going to have a look at a few differentials. So those players we just saw were some players that I really think you should own, and if you don't, it could cause you a lot of damage if they do return. But here are some differentials I think will be lower owned, but I do also think have a good chance of returning in this game week. So the first one is Madja, playing up front for Fulham. Now, we know what Leeds can be like, especially when they play away from home. They're very attacking. They like to get at the opposition. So I think Madja is sort of that focal point in the Fulham attack. I expect him to start that game. So there's definitely a possibility for just 5.5 million that he can get something out of that Leeds defence. Following on from that, the next one I have is Lookman. Now, at just 5.0, he's very easy for us to get into our teams. You know, a lot of downgrades, a lot of people looking to move money around. So at just 5 million in your midfield, if you're looking for a cheap midfielder, I think he's definitely a good option. I've owned him for a few weeks, and he's been very creative. He's been in front of goal quite a lot. He hasn't quite finished his chances, but I'm sure he'll get more chances to do that against Leeds. So both those Fulham players against Leeds, I think, could be good assets to own. Next up, we have Mulpay. Now, Newcastle against Brighton, Brighton against Newcastle is a difficult game to predict. Now I think it will probably be low scoring, but Mopai definitely is one of the main goal threats for Brighton. He potentially is on penalties as well. They haven't had one in a while and we don't know quite where it's going to fall, but I definitely think there's strong differential possibilities from Mopai in game week 29. Next up we have Jesse Lingard, and now Lingard will probably be the highest owned out of all 5 on this list. A lot of people looking to bring him in over the past couple of game weeks, but he still will have lower ownership than the players we've looked at before. At home to Arsenal, you know, Lingard coming from Manchester United going to West Ham, he's definitely going to have motivation to score in this game. So at just 6.1 million, he's looked great. You know, I think it's 6 goals and 2 assists in his 6 starts so far. So he's been really involved in everything that West Ham do. So definitely a good differential and player to get into your team ahead of game week 29. And the final one is Dawson. Now there will be a lot of people going in for Cresswell ahead of game week 29, playing at left back, being on set pieces, but it seems to be Dawson at the moment who's putting those set pieces into the back of the net. So I know a lot of people going for Cresswell, but I think Dawson at just 4.5 million could be a real differential on top of Cresswell. So a lot of players will be looking to bring in Cresswell, but then going into their tougher fixtures, that's a lot of money to be sat on your bench, whereas Dawson will cause you less of a problem going forward, and he has shown a lot of goal threat recently. So those are top 5 differentials for me going into game week 29 that I really think could be nice to maybe get points that others aren't going to, because there'll be a lot of overlap in those top 5 key players that we've already spoken about. So what we're going to do now is have a look at my blank game week 29 free hit draft. So if I was on a free hit, or if I was, you know, just trying to build a team for game week 29, the players that I'd be looking to own for that. So if we start in goal, I've gone with double Newcastle defence. Now if I look at all the matches, the game that I'm pretty sure or most certain that there'll be a clean sheet in is that Brighton versus Newcastle game. Both teams to score does seem unlikely, whereas in all the others you could see both teams scoring. So at the moment it's Dubravka that seems to be starting in goal for Newcastle, but you've got so much budget with this blank game week that you may as well get both of them in case there's that changing goalkeeper going into this fixture. But that's who I've gone with in goal. A lot of people will have the likes of Areola of Fulham or Martinez or Meslier of Leeds, but I just think that there's probably a higher chance that Brighton don't score than the opponents that they're all playing. First up into the defence, I've added onto this fixture, I've gone with double Brighton defence. Now, again, it's me thinking that I don't think there'll be both teams to score in this Brighton versus Newcastle fixture. So you're likely to get a clean sheet out of either your Newcastle goalkeeper or your Brighton defenders. And Duncan Veltman are the most attacking out of those Brighton defenders. So that's why those two have made it into my free hit team. Next up, we add my triple leads. Now, Dallas, Rafinha and Bamford are all in here. If Bamford is out, potentially Watkins will fill his place because he's not in my front 3. But I really think having this triple leads is definitely something that you'll want to do. They'll have such high ownership, but I also think they're really good assets for this game week. Next up, we have Aubameyang. So a bit of a differential, Arsenal versus West Ham. There will be a slight doubt in people's mind about Aubameyang starting, and it may depend on his minutes in the Europa League midweek, but I still think he's a good differential. They're finding a lot of form at the moment, Arsenal, and Aubameyang playing up front seems to be at the focal point of it. So I know a lot going in for Bale and Kane, and we'll speak about them in a minute, but I think Aubameyang, given the amount of money we have to spend on our free hit because of some of these budget players we can have, I think he's a great option. Next up, we have Antonio. So as I've spoken about, a really nice player to own. I think he'll have really strong ownership going into this. At home to Arsenal, Arsenal haven't kept a clean sheet in their past 3 games before game week 28. So yeah, definitely a player that I'd look to own, and a nice cheap price of 6.6 million. Next up, we add 2 players that were on my pretty essentials list at the start in Kane and Son. Now, I don't see many people going into this game week without this duo, so it is a bit of a shield pick, but then you will potentially be looking to captain one of these 2 assets. They've looked great recently. It's just if they have the firepower in their ranks to break down the Aston Villa defence, but if they do, Kane and Son are most likely going to be involved. The final one we add here is Gareth Bale. Now, I have gone for triple Spurs attack, and I could have added in potentially a West Ham midfielder, Lingard, in here, but I've gone with Bale. Again, if you have all 3 of these, and I expect Tottenham to score against Aston Villa, hence why I've gone with no Martinez in goal, and if you have all 3 of these, I expect them to start, then you're likely to get some attacking returns from them. So I like the triple up in Kane, Son and Bale. I expect them to score against Villa, so that's why they're all in there. the final 3 will be my 3 bench players. We've got Aina, Lookman and Cresswell. Now, Cresswell seems like quite a lot of money to spend on your bench, but if you've got that much money spare, you may as well go for maybe the most explosive asset in that West Ham defence. I could have gone with Dawson, but just for that ownership aspect, I have gone with Cresswell. Dawson has that attacking threat. If you don't have as much money in the bank, I think he's another really nice option. Aina in the Fulham defence, he seems the most hacking of those Fulham defenders. Again, I could have gone for a third Brighton defender, but I wanted to spread that risk around slightly. And then Lookman, again, I think as a differential, I think he's really nice at home to Leeds in Gameweek 29. So that's how my free hit team would look. But let's talk about that captaincy shout and vice captain and that bench now. So I would be putting my captaincy on Harry Kane, and I plan to do that on my own team. It's very hard to predict these games, and I think a lot of them will be very tight. But Harry Kane, if Spurs score, he's very much likely to be involved. He's also on penalties as well, so I can't see past a Harry Kane captain in Game Week 29. Son is my vice captain, and I would have a bench of Darlow, Aina, Lookman and Cresswell, so this would be how my free hit team would line up in Game Week 29. So I'll be playing a 3-4-3, so Dubravka in goal, Dallas, Dunk, Veltman, Aubameyang, Rafinha, Bale and Son, Bamford, Kane captain and Antonio. If Bamford was out injured, I'd probably favour going Madja or starting Lookman. I'd probably favour them over going Ollie Watkins against Tottenham. I just think that Fulham goal threat against Leeds will be slightly higher. So Madja or starting Lookman, who's already in there, would probably be the way I'd advise going if you want to look elsewhere from Bamford in case he's injured. So that's just a little summary of the key players that I think you guys should own, some differentials in there, and if I could have a free hit, how I would line up. I'm not playing my free hit, but just some thoughts for you there. So just to go back to the 4 fixtures that are in there for Game Week 29, I'd say the average person is probably going to put out about 7 or 8 players in this game week, so don't worry if you're down there with them, because that will be the average, I imagine. If you've got more than that, then great, you're in a really good position. So that's all we've got time for. If you guys have got questions about your Game Week 29 team, your chip strategy and which players potentially to bring in, drop them in the comments down below and I'll make sure to answer them ahead of the Game Week 29 deadline. But I hope you found this useful. If you have, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all next time.